Did you realize that Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite, just won a massive case against Google? You might be wondering, why do I care about that? So today we're going to dive into why this is so important to people that are interested in NFTs, Web3, and everything that we normally speak about on this show. Hello, I'm Taj, digitally known as Tropic Vibes, the host of Nifty Business, where we highlight NFTs and explore Web 3.0 as we move from pure speculation to creating real-world value. So just to give you a little background, Epic Games, the creator of Fortnite, has been going back and forth with both Apple and Google pertaining their policies on the app stores or the Play Store, respectively. Long story short, there is a 30% tax for any purchases that are made within any app on these stores. So obviously, if you have an iPhone, all of your apps are being downloaded from the App Store. And if you're on Android, most likely all the apps on your phone came from the Play Store. Now, when you make a purchase inside of these apps, they take 30%. They process everything through their payment methods, and there's really no other option. So what happened was a lot of apps started to fight against this. The first one that I know about was when Spotify started to say that, you know what, we're not making money, we're not profitable, so giving 30% off the top to these stores, it just makes no sense whatsoever. So you could not renew your subscription or sign up for paid Spotify from the App Store. You'd have to go to the website, spotify.com, sign up for it, and so forth. Well, a lot of other companies started to fall in line because why do they have to give up 30% of their revenue right off the top to these app stores? It's just not fair. At least that's what their argument was. So in the case of Fortnite, or Epic Games, I should say, the creator of Fortnite, what they decided to do was circumvent that payment platform within the App Store and send users to a secondary payment option that they were able to control. And of course, you can get a lot cheaper payment processing, especially when you're a company of that scale. So a small company can get 3% processing, 2% processing, but when you're doing massive transactions, the amount that these guys are doing, I'm sure they can negotiate really favorable rates that is far below 30%. Of course, this made Apple and Google upset, so what did? They kicked off Epic Games. Fortnite was no longer in the App Store, so they went to court. Epic Games' argument was that they have a monopoly, and this is not fair because basically they have no other choice but to give up 30%. And it's like extortion. It's like the mob, dealing with the mob, and you're doing business in their town, and no matter what, you have to pay them, even though they're technically not doing any work to give the customers any kind of benefit or anything of that nature. So, of course, this went to court. Now, it's interesting how this ended up playing out. So, the short story of it, without going into all the technical details and what have you, Apple, for the most part, won and Google lost. Why did Apple win? Well, because Apple controls the iPhone and the App Store and everything therein. It is a complete ecosystem that they own. It is their house. They're the head cook and bottle watcher, if you will. And if you're operating within their ecosystem, it is kind of hard not to play by their rules. Think of it as being in somebody's house. You have to play by whatever rules it is. When you're a kid, you're living with your parents and so forth. Now, with Google, it's a little bit different because for the most part, nobody owns a device that Google has owned or built. So they're operating with Samsung, HTC, and all of these different manufacturers all around the world that are using the Android ecosystem, and they happen to have the Play Store. So, of course, the judge ruled that this is a monopoly because Google is basically strong-arming developers and everyone to just use their app store and pay that fee. So, of course, they ruled in that favor, and now how is this going to play out? Who exactly knows? But it is a win. Epic Games says they do not want any kind of damages or anything. They just want fair practices, and it opens up. This is good news for small developers and small companies because most people don't have the resources that is a cash cow such as Fortnite to help to fight such a legal battle. So this win is big for everyone. So pivoting back to what's happening within Web3, why is this even important to me? Why is this on my radar? Why am I speaking about this? Well, first and foremost, one of the big hurdles that we could not overcome as an industry with crypto payments and so forth is these app stores, because for the most part, the vast majority of people in the world are accessing the internet through their phones. Now, they're going to have to use one of these platforms, either iOS or Android, 99% of the time. And then they're going to end up on the App Store. Now, these stores have that monopoly. Of course, as I just said, 30% off the top. The only exception is if it's a recurring payment, then it's 15% after the first year of payments, right? So if it's a monthly subscription, 30% upfront for the first year, then after that, it's 15% per month each of those. But if a one-time payment is made, with the exception of physical goods, then you have to pay 30%. And that is a lot, right? So some of these companies might be operating on much smaller margins than 30%, but they're giving 30% off the top. Or in many cases, Spotify is not even profitable. And a lot of these companies are not profitable, especially these tech startups. So giving 30% revenue off the top is just really crazy. However, it's not even an option for a Web3 gaming company or a Web3 app that wants to accept crypto as payment. Why? Because they're locked out of the system. They do not want to let these types of apps on simply because they cannot collect that 30%. So for example, if I wanted to buy some Fortnite skins, or if I wanted to buy a particular game and I wanted to pay in ETH, Bitcoin, Solana, whatever it might be, I couldn't do it. Why? Because it is not allowed on the App Store. Now, this is something that we were thinking about, was getting really exciting because Apple said some favorable things about NFTs. So we're like, okay, NFTs are coming to the App Store. Now, this has been a couple years and this has not played out as yet. And I want to think that the logistics of the payment processing is the main reason why they haven't embraced it. As long as Apple can figure out how to make money off of it, I'm sure they're going to embrace it. But now, it's just not feasible. So the reason why this is important, why it's going to open up, is because we know it is very hard to get consumers to change their habits. They download their apps from one of these app stores. Sure, if you're on a Samsung, you might have the Samsung App Store or whatever it might be, whichever device that you have, they might have their own proprietary store, but 99.9% of people are just going to go to either the Play Store or the iOS store, because on Apple, you don't even have an option. It's not like the olden days when you can just go to a random website, type in some code, download it, get your wallpapers, your ringtones, your games, and all of those different things. No, you're going to the App Store. So getting consumers to then change their habits and patterns, knowing very well that all their credit card information, everything is saved directly in these stores, it is so hard to then get them to pivot. Get dApps, right? These centralized applications that are coming from all over the place and paying in crypto, it is just a much harder ask for these people to change their habits. But because of this ruling in favor of Epic Games, we can possibly see alternative payment options and different options within the app stores opening up. I can't speak for Apple. I don't know exactly what's going on there because, as I said, that is a walled garden. They, for the most part, won that. However, to save graces, they're trying to say, no, we're for small businesses. And I think that's really more so to appeal to the developers. They don't want them to jump ship and go over to the Android store or stop developing for iOS or whatever it might be. But at the end of the day, I think it's all talk because the vast majority of phones in the US are iPhones. And as we know, that is the biggest market as far as consumers, spending power, and so forth. So they can do the dance and say all these nice things, just like what they do with privacy control and all of that. But at the end of the day, we know that Apple is printing cash. They should give some tips to the governments around the world because they are making massive amounts of money. It is by far the most profitable company in the world. And I was listening to the T-Boy podcast, Financial News, and a shocking statistic came out is that Apple, as we know, the most profitable company in the world. However, the iOS App Store would be the 15th most profitable company in the US. So again, they're printing cash. As a developer, someone who is dabbling in the space, trying to figure out where Web3 fits into all of this, knowing that the gateway to the internet for the vast majority of people in the world is a smartphone, having this ability to then open up for alternative payment methods and possibly even crypto down the line is a win for us, because I truly believe that gaming is going to open up the door for a lot of Web3 builders, because these skins and points and tokens and prizes and all of these different things, it just makes so much sense to integrate blockchain technology, NFTs, and so forth. So that's coming. I mean, whether it's called NFTs upfront, how it's going to be built in, I mean, that's for argument in itself, but it just makes sense that these marketplaces, all of this stuff, the tech is already there. It is running, it is building, it is working. So why not just integrate it instead of trying to make up your own thing? And I think a lot of especially smaller companies that are developing games and apps and so forth will just integrate blockchain technology. There's a community of coders already built in. And now if you can get onto the app stores and you can accept crypto and all these different things, I think it just opens up the door so much for technology to go forward. And I'm excited to see what happens here. So regardless of how this plays out, I know these are some crazy times. We're all trying to figure this out. We're building, we're making stuff up and just trying to do different things and innovate and so forth. But At the end of the day, the number one person that really has to be taken care of is the consumer. And if the consumer has an easy option for payment, easy option for getting these apps and so forth, well, then there is hope for Web3 adoption being sped up. So this is a huge win. On the surface, it just might seem like, well, Fortnite, Epic Games, app stores, like what does this have to do with Web3, NFTs, and all of this stuff that I normally speak about? But that is a huge, huge win for everyone within this circle. So love to hear your thoughts on this. I am at Tropic Vibes. Contact information is in the show notes or in the description, depending where you're listening or watching this. But as usual, I just want to thank you for taking time to listen to this as we're learning and building Web3 together. So until next time, later. The Nifty Business Arrow is not investment advice. It provides insights and information within the space. As with anything, please do your own research before making a decision whether you're making an investment or a purchase.